Where should you start with the digital transformation effort? Let's talk about that next. There is a lot of activity going on around digital transformation today. It's kind of turned into an umbrella term that companies use to describe any effort to employ digital technologies to improve processes, to develop definitions of their products, and so much more, right? But there's no doubt that there is a lot of activity. So to kind of get some insight into, does it pay off or not to invest in these kind of efforts, we, Lifecycle Insights, conducted this study called the ROI of Digital Transformation Initiatives. And there are some really interesting findings, especially when you look at, okay, where should you start and where do you go with your digital transformation initiative? So we posed questions to respondents on a wide range of digital transformation initiatives. And what we then did is we separated those respondents in a group based on how active their organizations were. So the least progressive were, as you can see from this chart, pursued the fewest number of initiatives. And the most progressive pursued almost not quite 4 times as many initiatives. A big takeaway here, though, is that it wasn't just people and process change. These organizations, the most progressive in particular, pursued a lot of technologies to empower and enable those changes, to make sure that you have almost like an amplifying factor to realize value out of it. And then over on the right, this questionnaire was actually what percentage of your projects hit your margin targets, and what percentage exceed or are on target or fell short. And what you can tell here, the way to interpret this, is the least progressive, kind of had hit and miss. Sometimes you can see that 35% at the top. That represents projects that exceeded margin targets, which is good. But you can see that 37%, that's the average percent of projects that fell short of margins. And compare that to the most progressive down at the bottom, right? You can see like a 10% shift from falling short into on target. And boy, that's a powerful thing that you can, if you can do that, then your company is going to be so much more healthy from a financial perspective. So I think this helps us answer the question of whether or not it's a good idea to invest in digital transformation. We're seeing the most progressive investing a lot, also making sure that they empower it with technology, but also it turns out it affects financial outcomes. This is just one finding that we shared with you on, in this today, but we're finding good differentiation across many different metrics and key performance indicators. So it's a good idea to invest. So the question then becomes for a lot of executives, where do you start? How do you get going on this? What's the right place to begin? And then where do you take it from there? So we have some guidance in the form of findings for that as well. In particular, we have a more granular view of what all these initiatives look like and what the differentiation is across these least progressive, most progressive, more progressive, and most progressive groups. And what you can see, you look on the right, that's your most progressive. You can see very high percentages here across the board, and the differentiation is clear. And by the way, this in particular is for product design. We'll look at product manufacturing here in a second. But you can see there's not one initiative area that is heads and shoulders above others, right? I mean, they're all kind of not necessarily even. There is some differences here and there, but you see, a big shift to the right here with higher percentages. And the same kind of plays out as you look at manufacturing. Let's take a look at that, right? So same type of story, lots of activity on the right. So good differentiation, but nothing's 70, 80, 90%, which would indicate that's where they started. That is the initiative area where they started and they expanded from there. Okay, so it's pretty clear that number one, it's a good idea to invest in these initiatives. There's a payback for sure. You got to enable it with technologies. There's no doubt about that. Also, the findings show us that, hey, there's no single investment area that is outpacing the others, which would indicate that's one of the first ones that they invested in. So this leads, to this. Actually, it's a common, piece of wisdom that we've kind of seen in PLM for some time. Is it's not as important where you start as much as that you get started. You have a tight scope around what you're targeting, gain success there, and then expand over time, right? So taking a flexible type of approach allows you to address the biggest issues in your company and expand progressively over time. And as you do that, you get more synergy with prior efforts, digital transformation efforts, because they can build on one another. So that's the takeaway here, is that there's not one area where you're going to see guidance where you need to start here and then progress here and here and here. It's more of figure out what your biggest issues are, tackle that, and then progress from there at your own pace. So that's it. That's the takeaway.